Anric, what's going on, man? I'm looking forward to chatting today
Hey
about all.
guys, that was awesome. Yeah, that was really fun. Excellent.
So I know we've got Raising Capital Live coming up June 12th through the 14th.
Yes, it's over here.
So Raising
I can't find it. It's hidden
Capital
behind
Live.
my chair.
But I thought
But
today it would be good just to break down what is that framework that we're talking about
yeah,
inside of that, and we can touch on maybe how I was thinking how two of the topics kind of play together. And then we'll let everyone kind of watch this, get a taste of a bit of what we're going to be talking about much more in depth at the event. And we'll go from there. What do you think?
yeah, no, it is. I'm just want to. I've got a lot of people in the waiting room at the moment, and I'm just going to lock the meeting because it's kind of a little disruptive, and I really wanted to discuss this in a little greater depth with you. So,
Hey Todd, it's good to
if
see you
you
here.
allow me to frame this, so just a quick refresher for some of you guys who might not have seen this. So the framework that Robbie and I use in our coaching is that essentially strategy plus story plus systems equals success in capital raising and in attracting your right fit and ideal client, investor, and partner. So the thing that I want to get into with Robbie today is the interaction or the delicate dance between story and systems. Because as we've mentioned before, there is actually very little point of having a phenomenal story if you don't have the systems to actually work it and capture that client interest, right? And without a good story, there is no point in having a system. All you've got is basically cheesy webinars and or horrible things that just are not fun. And without a compelling story, it is literally impossible to build a well functioning and profitable capital traction system. So, Robbie, are you up for that? Because obviously, strategy runs through all of that. But if we can just focus on those ones today, and I know this is spontaneous, as are a lot of things that we do, but you know, let's see if we can discuss it in 15 minutes.
Let's go.
All
Anric, why
righty.
don't why don't you start? I'd love, how do you think about the relationship between those two, and especially when it comes to the systems that need to be built?
Okay. So I'm going to just switch back and stay on my iPad because that's probably just the easiest way. As you know, I'm slightly retarded and I don't seem to be able to explain anything to anybody without drawing, right? So um, give me 2 minutes and let me just build a very straightforward, simple capital attraction funnel. Okay. And then I'll tell you where I think story belongs. And then I want you to poke holes in it and bring it from your perspective. And whilst I'm doing that, Robbie, do you mind? I mean, there's quite a few new faces in here today who have not met you before. Do you mind, whilst I'm drawing this out, give a little rundown about like where you come from and what do you do, and why this is important?
Sure. I mean, where I originally come from is being a trial lawyer. And in that world, I was trying murders, capital murders, child abuse cases. And in fact, I tried 102 of them. And inside of that world, really came to realize that it was a game of communication, right? It was a game of strategy, thinking about rhetoric and oratory, and then, of course, storytelling. Because when you actually stand in front of a judge, you stand in front of a jury, you're telling a story of what happened, a story of what will happen if they do what you want them to do. So that was my career background for many, many years. During that time, I was also teaching at SMU Law School. I was teaching trial advocacy and coaching the national mock trial team for students. I did that for 3 years and realized that the skills necessary to be great in a courtroom, one, could be taught. And two, as I started to think about that, I said, why couldn't it be taught to people outside of the legal profession? And that's when I decided, after years of trying really nasty child abuse cases, that it was time to move on and do some work in the business and technology world. And so that's when I left and started working with CEOs really in that space, entrepreneurs, executives around telling their story, figuring out their messaging, thinking about their communication strategy so that they could ultimately drive their company forward and attract capital in all the various ways, right? So customer capital, human capital, and people that you want to work for you. And then, of course, capital as we think about it from investors. And now, over the past 2.5 years in doing that work, they've raised almost $750 million at this point.
Wow.
It's just really looking at how do we run a capital raising process like a trial lawyer runs a trial. And if you can do that well, good things happen. And that's ultimately what brought us together, because you have a very similar approach. And when you told it to me, I could see how it lined up really beautifully with the things that I love the most, which is more of the strategy and the storytelling and less of the systems, but you love the system. So here we are.
Okay. So, I mean, if what I've just done is drawn out a very basic funnel. Okay. Most funnels tend to be like 7 or 8 steps, but just to keep it simple, I've kept it at 4. Okay. So what I've got on the top level is basically, this is your magnet, right? That thing that I'm drawing is supposed to be a magnet that attracts your right fit client. Okay. Here's problem number 1, and this is where story comes in. If you don't know who your right fit client, who your right fit investor, who your right fit partner is, how can you attract them? Okay. That's problem number 1, because you've got to think about, where do people come from, right? So obviously you can have LinkedIn, you can have Twitter or X or YouTube or whatever social media. You can have an email marketing list. You can get on other people's stages. You can be meeting people, all sorts. The whole mix has to enter and this is what is called top of funnel. At the top of your funnel, you've got to start dividing the room. Think of yourself as Moses dividing the ocean, right? You've got to basically divide the room into people that are interested in you and people that are not. You can't do that without a compelling story. And this is where I always, I don't know if you've seen that little clip of mine, and I'll gladly provide it, of, it's not an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch sets you up for failure. It's an escalator pitch. So you got to think about an escalator pitch basically being, and before I met Robbie, this is basically how I used to do it. I would advise people that you need to have a 30-second story that is compelling and interesting enough to earn you the right to speak for 3 minutes. And if those 3 minutes are interesting enough to your right fit client, it will earn you the right to get 30 minutes of their time, which is why I absolutely detest these processes where you get this cold pitch slap on LinkedIn that says, let's jump on a Zoom, here's my Calendly link. You know what I mean? I think it's disrespectful. It's a complete and utter waste of time, and it's the wrong way to use LinkedIn, okay? Because we haven't done the 30-second thing that excites me. So call that hook. We haven't gone deeper into 3 minutes where I'm going, okay, Robbie's actually talking to me. I better pay attention. This is interesting. I actually have that very same problem where you're basically completing the sentences that your right fit client is having in his head or is discussing at the dinner table. And if that is a home run, then let me get out the way. You have now earned the right to have his time for 30 minutes. Here's the problem, and this is why we need Robbie. Nobody these days gives you 30 minutes, okay? And if you try and sell 30 minutes, even with your right fit client, you're going to have a real struggle. So you need a expert story crafter who can help you design your story so that it is in bite-sized chunks, delivered correctly at the right time, because you can do the right thing at the wrong time and it will fail. You've got to do the right thing with decent execution at the right time. And this is where the dance between your system and your story comes in. This is why Robbie and I have such a wonderful partnership, why people just go nuts about it, because Robbie can teach you how to actually create your story, how to deliver it. And then together, we design the right strategy of, okay, this piece goes here, this piece goes here, and that piece goes here. Because give me another minute, okay? I know I'm running over time already. So the top of funnel is basically your hook and your attraction and your repel action. So that takes you then into slightly deeper territory where you now want to start qualifying those clients, but establishing yourself as a credible witness, as a credible resource, as a credible consultant or whatever that is trustworthy and interesting enough for me to want to go deeper. And then once you've added some value, you've got to take them to the middle of your funnel at step 3, where now you can actually start serving and adding value before you ask for anything. Okay. This is the super, super important part. Nobody wants to listen to you go blah, 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 until they realize, hey, man, that guy's talking to me. Yeah. Why? I would love to be a part of this because I have that exact same problem. So this is where, for example, that's why Robbie and I have the Capital Cafe, where people can come in on an invitation-only basis and come and hang out with us. Yeah, I mean, so that's why it's so nice seeing you guys all here today, because I know that you have gone through the top of our funnel. You've looked at some of our videos. You've looked at some of our clips. You've watched some of our, promotions. You've watched us basically hang out and solve people's problems. And you go, yeah, these two guys are interesting. So if you're wondering, you are right now in step 3 over here, where we get to add value and absolutely authentically show you what we can do. And then if it's interesting, then you can get an invitation and you go deeper. Had we started here at 4th base, you would have called us all weird. Okay, so Robbie, that's my intro.
It all makes sense. I mean, it's a little bit, if we look at it from a communication standpoint and telling the story, right? The top is like the one-liner. It's the really tight thing. Like if someone came to me, I'd be like, I'm a former trial lawyer who tried 102 jury trials, murders and child abuse cases, left that to become an entrepreneur, and now work in strategic communication, storytelling world with CEOs, building incredible businesses. That's a 30-second bit that you can say, okay, that either speaks to me or it doesn't. Then you can say, okay, Robbie, like, tell me more. Like, give me a little bit more background in terms of what you're doing these days. And then I can give the 3-minute version. And then it's, oh, that's really interesting. How did you get into deciding that was what made sense? Well, now I have permission to go into the 30-minute version, which is, let me walk you through what I experienced as a trial lawyer. Let me tell you what I saw doing that work and how it impacted me and where it comes from. And then I can go much deeper. I can talk about things that were when I was younger. So there's always this progression. You have to, I think about it a little bit. I use the example a lot of times because I'll talk about levels of storytelling. I call it level 1, level 2, level 3 storytelling. It's a little bit different than what we're talking about here, but it's a similar concept. But when I'm talking to people, I say you should think about it like Russian dolls. I don't know if you remember those dolls, but
Yep.
You have like a giant one, and then when you open it up, there's a smaller one. And then when you open that one up, there's a smaller one. And what we're trying to do is to get people to open up the Russian doll and say, okay, go deeper. And then pull it open again, go deeper. That's really what we think about from a communication and storytelling strategy perspective. Like we want them to pull themselves into the information, not where you just word vomit it all to them. And this is one of the biggest challenges that people have when they're trying to raise capital, right? Is they word vomit, they brain dump, they have no idea what the audience wants to hear. They don't understand the psychology of the person, of the investor they're talking to. They're not thinking about the psychological hooks that are going to get them. They're not thinking about the emotional points that are going to really stick with them. And as a result, it just doesn't land. So like you can have the best system ever, right? And you might get people into the top piece of the funnel. But if you don't have a good story to drive them into layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, it doesn't matter. Now, if you don't have a good system, and I tell people this all the time, because anyone wants to come and work with me, the first thing I'm going to vet is, do you have a basis for success? Like, if I create this story and communication strategy for you, are you going to be able to run it and get people to listen to it, to see it, to interact with it? And if they come to me, they're like, I don't have anyone in these spaces. I don't know any investors. I don't know anybody. I have no way to talk to anyone. Well, that's a non-starter, because there's no system in place to actually run that. And it goes back to the idea of, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, did it really fall? And selfishly, I don't want to build a story with someone if it's gonna fail. And it's gonna fail not because the story, but just because there's no receptive audience to listen to it. So you have to really think about both these pieces, because they play together. It's a symbiotic relationship.
So I have a neat idea that I could use your help with. This kind of be interesting, because I built a funnel for a business that is now a multi-billion-dollar business, right? And I built the exact same funnel for a fund manager who I shall not name, okay, who's actually a better money manager. And he still has hardly raised any capital out of it, even though it's the identical funnel. And so obviously in our raising capital event, we're going to go much, much, much deeper into the actual storytelling and all of that kind of stuff. What I want to do is draw this funnel out. Okay. I'm going to do it kind of from memory. Now, remember, it was a very successful funnel, and it was also a funnel that completely failed. Right. And it's a huge diagram, but basically I'm just going to draw it around the page. So this is the funnel entry, right? So just consider this a door at step one. Now, how do people get into that door? That is the interesting thing, because if you cannot fill your top of funnel with anything, then you've got a problem, right? So what we basically designed was 3 social media channels. LinkedIn is one of them, X is one of them, and YouTube was the other one, right? They all feed into the funnel entrance, which was basically designed with 10 different types, if that makes sense, of content that is delivered to those platforms every week and repurposed. What we did in order to create that content, and this is where Robbie comes in, is that I had this fund manager basically tell his story from start to finish. And I tell you, it was a nightmare, because it just rambled on and on and on and went into all the technical details and the whole thing. But I had a kind of an evil plan in mind, in that basically I just let him run and let him run and let him run and let him run. And then kind of when he had exhausted all his techno mumbo jumbo trying to show how phenomenal he is and how he's the best money manager, and how he's got this degree and that degree and all that, once he'd exhausted himself, I started asking him a couple of questions. And they were basically questions that were all asked in a different way, coming right after the thing that Robbie is after. Why? Okay. Why are you doing this? Why are you building this? Why are you trying to help people? Why did you leave your Goldman job? Why should people trust you? Why is now the right time? I kept asking the same question, getting like 20 different answers. And that is where all the content came from. Little clips of him answering my questions, right? Because in that, by answering that why, he wasn't boring people with the what and the blah, blah, blah. He was really reaching most people on an emotional level, going, yeah, these Wall Street guys, they suck. They take all your money and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sick of it and this and that. And you know what? I want to go do this, right? So now back to the funnel. So remember, we were not talking about what, okay? We were talking about why. And then the next step was what is essentially, you could call it a PLF funnel or a video sales letter. It was a 3-step video sequence that ended up in a 4-step invitation where you could sign up in that content. So the call to action at the end of all of these social posts, right, Robbie, was an invitation to join the mailing list and get my 3-step secrets of managing money successfully. How do I make this money? And basically that was a very straightforward funnel. Step 1, tomorrow I'm going to send you step 2, step 3 on Thursday, and then that is followed up on step 4 for him to join basically his community of right fit clients. What did they get in the community? Well, every week I'm going to hang out. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. I'm going to tell you what's going on in markets, and I'm going to tell you where I'm going to make money next week. Absolutely off the record, no recordings. You're invited. If you're an accredited investor and you have come through the 4-step funnel, then you're invited into this community. Now that has grown significantly for him to make a once-a-month invitation, basically to the money call. Sorry, that looks very scrappy. I got to change the pen. Once a month, he basically has a small invitation-only pitch to say, hey, I would like to work with you on your portfolio. You show me what you got, show me what assets you have, show me what, and I'll tell you what I would do, and I'll show you my portfolio. So do you see what he's doing at every single level? He's establishing expertise over here. He's establishing trust over here. He's building a community. He's getting to know his clients, and eventually he would invite them to his office to discuss, how can I help you? How would you like to become a client? He does not go on roadshows. He does not go to cap intro events. He does not go to marketing events. He doesn't go to hedge fund conferences. This is a $1.1 billion funnel. So now if you think about Robbie's zone of genius, all of this is actually, let me see if I have a different color. I don't know. Where are the colors? All of this is actually about story, because this story has to be broken up into little pieces. Some of it is delivered here. Some of it is delivered here. It's absolutely delivered here. It's delivered here, delivered here, delivered here. It is constantly reinforced and delivered in the community group. Let me get out the way. This is the biggest storytelling component over here, because at this point it becomes us. It's no longer me. It's like, how are we going to go do this together? Without a good story, this whole funnel would fail. Without the funnel, the story would fail. So that's my framework. And wow, I took way too much of the microphone here today, Robbie. I'm sorry, but
no, I think this is great. I think this is exactly what people need to realize. All the ways you have to set up the system appropriately to succeed. You don't just get to go out and say, I want to raise capital, and it just magically flows in. I think there's a lot of people who approach it that way. They approach it in a very amateurish way. And the second piece is you just have to realize too, there's this misconception around what story is. It's, oh yeah, I'll tell my story and then we'll move on to all the other stuff. And the reality is you're just saying it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's not just the main story. You're telling the story about who you are. You're telling the story of past wins. You're telling analogous stories. You're building in metaphors. You're pulling in parables. You are storytelling across the board, because story is 22 times more memorable than just talking about facts and figures and statistics and any of the other stuff. Like, it is 22 times more memorable. And not only is it more memorable, but we know the science behind this. it creates the mirror neurons, and it allows the listener to connect with the person who's speaking. And it triggers the emotional side of the brain versus the logical side of the brain. And what side of the brain is making the decision of, I want to invest? It is the emotional side. The logical side backs that up to say, I'm a logical being, even though we all know we're not. So if you think about it, story has to be the centerpiece, but you have to surround it with the mechanism or the system that allows it to really shine.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen a couple of your videos, which I love, by the way, because if you think of, and I love the way Robbie pulls these parallels out, because if you look at master storytellers, right? And I'm not talking about Richard Attenborough, I'm talking about Jeff Bezos, I'm talking about Steve Jobs. These guys were master storytellers that could literally pull the audience in, because people always back the person, not the company. It's the person. So if you're the founder, if you're an entrepreneur, you're an investment advisor, you're a hedge fund manager, you're a venture capital guy, it doesn't matter. The principles are exactly the same. It's the person that gets the backing. Yes, you've got to put the other blocks in place, and you've got to show the other blocks are in place. But I've seen more money raised on the back of a napkin than I have seen in business plans and, you know, very, very complex meetings with you know, 20 advisors in it. If you know, I normally literally I teach this to people. If your plan does not fit on a napkin, you shouldn't be telling the story, right? And without the strategy of breaking that story into the right pieces that are then delivered at the right time, you're just going to overwhelm people or bore people. That is the big challenge, because everybody is so short of time. We're so distracted. We're so distractible. It's almost like we're looking for the distraction. So your story has to grab people almost like a hook, where they go, wow, yes, I want to hear about that. That's interesting. And then the emotions, and this is the part that Robbie's so good, the emotion and the pitch, everything changes as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into that relationship. So that is essentially why we are doing this event, the one that's up behind me at the moment, raisingcapital.live. This is the official pitch that you're getting. That is on June 12th to the 14th. It's a 3-day live virtual event where you can sit right here, front row, VIP seats, engage with us, ask questions, bring your story, get coaching, get training, and we will show you how strategy plus story plus systems can actually be built properly for you. It's not some kind of cheesy webinar. It is a fully engaged meeting. So I think that's about it of what we have for time today, Robbie. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we held people a little bit longer than we anticipated, but we appreciate everyone sticking around. Go out and start executing on this. Think about it, and we would love to see you. Raisingcapital.live, June 12th through the 14th. Again, we're not going to hold anything back. I'm excited to really break down some concepts in new ways that people haven't seen before, and it's the results have been really impressive, Anric. So I'm excited to share more of it, and we'll see everybody then. So have a great rest of your day.
Excellent, excellent. All right, guys. Cheers. Bye. See ya. All right, guys, I'm just going to finish the live stream real quickly, and then I will be here live with you guys and unmute you.